Welcome to the world of Crimson Desire. I'm Cinnway, the writer behind this dark journey. This isn't just a story, it's a descent into human psyche, hidden trauma, and the kind of obsession that doesn't ask for permission. You won't find fairy tale endings here. Only twisted truths, broken masks, and hearts that bleed more than they beat. And quick recap we had seen before sent us of possession Kim Tae-young was never the type to chase. As a commanding alpha, he was used to being followed, feared, and adored in silence. He ruled his world without chaos, until chaos walked into it, wrapped in quiet eyes and a fragile scent. Jeon Jungkook, the new Omega, he didn't belong here. Not in Tae-young's class, not in his world, and definitely not in his control. But Jungkook didn't flinch like others. He didn't shrink or obey, he simply existed, untouched, unreadable, and devastatingly calm. And that made Tae-young restless. What began as casual dominance turned into something else, an obsession he couldn't name. Every glance Jungkook refused to give, every reaction he withheld, became a challenge that scratched at Tae-young's pride and instincts. But Jungkook wasn't a mystery, he was a storm in disguise. As the layers peeled back, Tae-young saw more than he was ready for. Fear buried under silence, pain stitched beneath skin, and a history that wasn't just dark, it was cruel. We saw each other after some time. The hunter's instinct. The truth bled through the cracks. Jungkook's nightmare dragged him into the past he never chose. A cold room, shackles, a man's voice dripping with betrayal. You're nothing but a product now, just like your mother was. That night didn't end when he opened his eyes. Because in the mirror, the man was still watching, smiling, as if waiting to reclaim what he once owned. Up next, Tae-young senses the shift. The Omega he thought he could break might already be broken. But who did it? And why does it feel like someone else is still pulling the strings? Because in this game, possession isn't always physical. Sometimes it's carved into the soul. Then next morning we see the dorm room was dim, cloaked in the early morning haze that softened the edges of reality. Pale light seeped in through the blinds, brushing against the corners of Jungkook's bed. The hum of the heater echoed low, like a distant lullaby that never quite reached comfort. Jungkook sat upright on his mattress, already dressed, unmoving. His gaze was fixed, not on anything in particular, but somewhere beyond the walls. His fingers, slender and pale, trembled slightly as they tightened around the strap of his bag. No one would guess what he had seen the night before, but the way his shoulders were stiff, the way he flinched at the rustle of the wind outside, he was anything but at peace. He didn't look back as he stepped out. On campus, the air on campus was brisk, alive with the usual murmur of morning chatter. Students rushed past with coffee cups and sleepy yawns, laughter floating in the background. Life moved on, as it always did. But Jungkook felt like he was standing on a different frequency. Everything was too loud, too bright, too unreal. His steps were slow, careful. The weight of unfamiliar stares pressed against his skin, and even though he told himself he was imagining it, his heartbeat refused to calm. His eyes flicked left, then right. Nothing. Just people. Just noise. And yet, something felt off. He tried to brush it off, telling himself he was being paranoid. That the dream, no, the memory, had shaken him more than he'd thought. But the feeling didn't leave. It lingered, like eyes on the back of his neck. Empty seat when Jungkook entered the lecture hall. He hesitated. The room was nearly full. His usual seat next to Tae-young remained empty. That in itself was strange. Kim Tae-young never missed class. He was always on time, always effortlessly composed, leaning back in his chair like he owned the space around him. And when Jungkook walked in, Tae-young always looked up, first sharp eyes, unreadable smirk. Today there was no smirk, no stare. Just an empty chair and a silence that made Jungkook's throat dry. He slid into the seat quietly, trying not to draw attention. But as the professor began speaking, he couldn't focus. He kept glancing toward the door. Tae-young didn't show, not even once. The library by mid-afternoon, the unease in Jungkook's chest had solidified into something heavier. Tae-young still hadn't appeared. No text, no sign of him on campus. And even more than the strange feeling of being watched, that bothered him. He wandered into the campus library, half hoping to spot him, half wanting to be alone in the silence of the books. The air inside was cool, almost cold, but it helped clear his head. He chose a table near the far corner, one where no one else usually sat. It was quiet there. Safe. Jungkook opened his notebook but didn't write. His fingers hovered over the page, unmoving. Instead, his gaze drifted to the window across from him. Outside, students walked back and forth, a blur of coats and scarves, laughter and footsteps. And then he saw him, across the courtyard. A man standing alone near the trees. He wasn't moving, just standing still, too still, his face shadowed by the hood of his black coat. Something about him felt wrong. Jungkook's stomach twisted. He blinked, and the man was gone. The bathroom mirror later. Jungkook washed his hands in the restroom, trying to shake the creeping cold in his spine. The faucet sputtered as water rushed out, warm against his skin. He looked up at the mirror. At first, he saw nothing strange, just himself, pale, tired, hollow-eyed. But then, behind him in the mirror's reflection, someone moved. A shadow. Jungkook whipped around, empty. The stall doors were shut. Silence pressed against his ears. Nothing. No one. But his reflection had seen it. He grabbed his bag and left without drying his hands. Evening, by the time the sun dipped below the rooftops, turning the sky a murky gray, Jungkook's nerves were frayed. He was too tired to think straight, but too alert to relax. The last lecture of the day ended, and he barely heard a word. He walked with his head low, earphones in, but no music playing. A trick he learned long ago. People tended to leave you alone if they thought you couldn't hear them. That damned voice, low, calm, dangerous. Kim Tae-young. The alpha stood there, tall and steady, eyes sharp as ever. His grip on Jungkook's wrist was firm, but not painful. "What the hell are you doing walking alone here?" Tae-young asked, voice hard. Jungkook tried to steady his breath, words catching in his throat. "I thought I saw someone." Tae-young's jaw tensed. He looked around, scanning the shadows behind them. "You thought?" "I don't know," Jungkook whispered. "It's like someone was following me." Tae-young narrowed his eyes. "Did they touch you? Speak to you?" Jungkook shook his head. "No, just watching." Tae-young's hand slipped from his wrist to his shoulder. Not roughly, almost protectively. "Next time call me." Jungkook blinked. "You weren't in class." "I had something to deal with," Tae-young replied coolly. "But if I knew you'd be wandering around like this, I wouldn't have left." There was something in his tone, half warning, half something else. Something unreadable. Jungkook looked away, heart still racing. "I wasn't planning to." "I know." Tae-young stepped closer. "But trouble finds you anyway." Jungkook didn't answer. Because somewhere in the distance, behind the glass walls of the greenhouse, someone was still watching. A silhouette. Paul, still unmoving. And this time Tae-young saw it too. After that, the silence between them was deafening. Jungkook stood frozen, his back pressed to the cold wall of the hallway, breath trembling between parted lips. Tae-young's hand still rested against his cheek, thumb grazing skin that burned beneath the touch. The kiss lingered like a scent in the air, something warm, consuming, and utterly disarming. He hadn't meant to lean in. He hadn't even meant to pause. But when Tae-young's lips brushed his, something inside Jungkook shattered and folded all at once. And he hadn't stopped it. Even now he didn't know why. Jungkook finally breathed, voice hoarse. "Why did you?" "I've been watching you." Tae-young's voice was low, steady, dangerously honest. For days now. The blood drained from Jungkook's face. He pulled away instinctively, heart pounding against his ribcage. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean I know," Tae-young said quietly. "About the nightmares. The way you flinch when someone walks behind you. The way you never look anyone in the eye for too long." Jungkook shook his head. "You had no right. I had no choice." That stopped him. Tae-young stepped closer, the hallway light catching the edge of his jaw. He looked calm, but Jungkook could feel the tension simmering beneath his skin like a storm that had waited too long to break. "I didn't follow you to scare you," Tae-young continued, his voice softer now. "I followed you because every time I saw you look over your shoulder, something twisted in my chest. Like I needed to know what you were running from. Because, for the first time, I didn't want to look away." Jungkook's fingers curled at his sides. "Then why kiss me?" There was a pause. Tae-young looked at him, eyes unreadable. "Because," he said, "you looked like you were about to disappear, and I needed to feel if you were real." The words knocked the air out of Jungkook's lungs. Something in his chest tightened, unfamiliar and hot and terrifying. He opened his mouth to speak, but footsteps echoed the end of the hallway. Both turned. A figure moved past the corridor, slow, hooded, barely visible in the flickering light. Jungkook tensed instantly, eyes wide. "That's not you?" "No," Taeyoung replied, already pulling him behind. They moved quickly, down the hallway, out through the back stairwell. The campus was quiet, the late winter wind rustling leaves that hadn't quite let go. Jungkook's hands were shaking. Taeyoung grabbed his wrist. "Come with me." He didn't ask where. He just followed. Taeyoung's apartment 10 minutes later. The moment the door closed behind them, the weight of it all hit Jungkook like a wave. He sank onto the edge of the couch, eyes scanning the room but not seeing it. Taeyoung stood at the counter, pouring a glass of water. No words passed between them until he offered it. "Drink." Jungkook took it, fingers trembling. "Whoever that was," Taeyoung said, pacing slowly now. "They've been around for days. I noticed someone tailing you at the station. I thought maybe it was nothing. But tonight," Jungkook looked up. "So you weren't the one I felt at the library?" "No," Taeyoung said, "that wasn't me." Fear curled tighter in his stomach. Taeyoung sat down beside him, not too close. Just close enough for Jungkook to feel the quiet weight of his presence. "You're not safe," Taeyoung murmured. "And you're not telling anyone why." Jungkook stared into the glass. "There's no one to tell." "Silence, then, tell me." Jungkook shook his head. "You wouldn't understand." "I might." "You won't," Jungkook snapped, voice cracking. "Because I'm not like you. I don't come from safety or privilege or a clean past. I've been bought, soul broken, and you," he turned to face him, eyes blazing. "You kissed me like I was whole. That's not real." Taehyung didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned forward, eyes locked on Jungkook's. "Then let me be the lie you need." Jungkook blinked. He hated how the words found something soft inside him, hated that it made breathing harder. Taehyung reached out gently, slowly, tracing a finger down Jungkook's wrist. And once again, Jungkook didn't pull away. Midnight, the window later that night, after a long wordless hour of silence, Jungkook stood by the window. His reflection stared back, pale, tired, unfamiliar. "I never told anyone," he said quietly, not turning. "Not even my mother. Not when they took me. Not when I came back." Taehyung stood behind him, listening. "I was kept in a facility for 2 years. Underground, no names, no windows. Just numbers." His voice was steady, but his fingers trembled at his sides. "They trained us to obey. Some gave in. I fought. That's what made me valuable." "Jungkook," he shook his head. "I don't want your pity." "I'm not giving you pity," Taehyung said. "I'm giving you presence. I'm here." Jungkook turned then, eyes searching his face. "You're dangerous," he whispered. "I am," Taehyung said honestly. "Then why do I feel safer near you than anyone else?" Taehyung stepped closer, and Jungkook didn't move. The air between them thinned. Taehyung's hand found his waist. "Because I see you," he whispered. "And I don't want to look away." Their mouths met again, this time slower, deeper, not born of impulse, but of hunger that had nowhere else to go. Jungkook let it happen. Let the warmth consume the cold that lived beneath his skin. He didn't know why he couldn't stop it. But he didn't want to. Not with Taehyung. Across the street unknown POV, a pair of eyes watched from the shadows. A phone buzzed. A message popped up. "He's getting too close. Time to accelerate the plan." The man smiled, lips curling into something cruel. He pressed send and turned away from the window. Sometime later, the sun had just begun to rise, casting soft rays of light into the dorm room. Jungkook woke to the sound of birds chirping outside the window, but the warmth of the morning only made his skin feel like it was on fire. His mind replayed the kiss, the way Taehyung's lips had met his, with an intensity that left no room for resistance. Even now, his body felt the lingering heat of that touch. But no matter how hard he tried to push it out of his head, the feeling remained. His body burned with the aftermath of that kiss, and his mind was in turmoil. He ran his fingers through his hair, frustration building as he sat up in bed. His pulse raced as he recalled how he had tried to resist, how his body had betrayed him. He was supposed to hate him. He was supposed to despise everything Taehyung stood for. But that kiss had made everything blur, everything crumble in his mind. He stood up, his hands trembling slightly as he paced across the room. He couldn't escape it. The memories, the feelings, they were haunting him. And the worst part? He didn't know why. Why the hell did you kiss me? Vkook muttered to the empty room. But deep down, he already knew the answer. Taeyoung didn't kiss him out of kindness or pity. No, it was a challenge, a way to claim control. Vkook could see it in his eyes, a quiet possessiveness, something that stirred the air between them. You're mine. The words lingered in his mind like a poison. Taeyoung had already marked him, whether he wanted it or not. And that made him angry. Jungkook's hand curled into a fist, his nails digging into his palm as he tried to push the emotions down. He wasn't supposed to feel this way. He wasn't supposed to want him. But then it hit him, harder than before. A wave of hatred surged up from the pit of his stomach. His chest tightened as his breathing grew shallow. He hated himself for what had happened, for what Taeyoung had made him feel. Stop, he whispered to himself, eyes squeezed shut. He could feel the anger rising like an uncontrollable fire. But it wasn't enough, no matter how hard he tried to suppress it. The memory of that kiss and the emotions swirling in him made it impossible to think straight. The self-loathing hit him harder than the passion had. He could feel it deep in his bones. Jungkook looked at his reflection in the mirror across the room. His hair was disheveled, his eyes haunted. He didn't recognize the person staring back at him. He wasn't supposed to be this weak, this vulnerable. He wasn't supposed to care. The anger was relentless now, burning through him like wildfire. His pulse raced again, but this time it wasn't from desire, it was from the fury that threatened to consume him. He grabbed the edge of the desk, his knuckles turning white as his breathing grew erratic. Without thinking, he turned and dug his nails into his forearm, scratching the skin until it bled. The pain was sharp, and for a moment, it was the only thing that grounded him. But even that didn't help. He could still feel the heat from Taeyoung's kiss searing through him, and it only made him feel more disgusted with himself. Why had he let it happen? Why had he given in? He was supposed to hate Taeyoung, but instead, he felt like he was losing himself. A sudden knock on the door jolted him out of his thoughts. He froze. No one was supposed to be here. The door creaked open, and Jungkook's heart skipped a beat when he saw who it was. It was Taeyoung, standing in the doorway with that same unreadable look in his eyes. Jungkook's mind raced. The anger, the shame, the pain, it all came flooding back in an instant. Taeyoung, what the hell are you doing here? Jungkook's voice trembled, but he couldn't stop himself. I'm here to make sure you're okay, Taeyoung said, his tone calm, as though nothing had happened between them. Jungkook felt his chest tighten, the mix of anger and confusion rising within him. Okay, he repeated, scoffing. Why would you care? You kissed me. Then you just walk away, like it meant nothing. Taeyoung stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Jungkook. He was close now, dangerously close. Jungkook could feel the heat radiating off him. I don't expect you to understand, Taeyoung said softly, his voice low, but it meant something to me. Jungkook felt his heart rate pick up again. He didn't know what to do with this. He couldn't comprehend it. Just stay away from me. Jungkook spat, his voice harsh as he pushed past Taeyoung and toward the door. But Taeyoung grabbed his arm, his grip firm but not painful. I won't, Taeyoung whispered. Not until you realize what this is between us. At that moment, the door to the dorm room burst open. A figure stepped inside, tall, with an air of quiet confidence. His eyes immediately found Jungkook, and then they locked on Taeyoung. A chill ran through the air, and Jungkook's pulse quickened. This was the unknown crazy alpha. Then we see at midnight, Jungkook's dorm room. The clock on the wall ticked, soft but persistent. The dim moonlight filtered through the blinds, casting pale stripes over Jungkook's trembling body as he lay twisted in his sheets. Sweat beaded his forehead, breath caught between gasps and choked sobs. The nightmare began slowly, the way they always did, a flicker of memory, a familiar scent, then the cold. Bare feet against the cement floor, steel walls, the thick stench of sweat, metal, and something. Rotting. He was there again. That room. That cage. A single bulb buzzed overhead. Hands grabbed him, yanked him, tossed him onto a stained mattress. Shadows towered above him, faces unclear, but voices unforgettable. Open your mouth. He shook his head. Tears, resistance. A scream swallowed into silence. Laughter. Cruel, repetitive. Inhuman. He was used. He was passed around. He was left, half-conscious, bones aching, heart shredded. Then the silence returned, louder than the chaos before it. And a whisper reached his ear, colder than steel. "You're nothing without us. You never were." Morning Jungkook's dorm room. Jungkook jolted awake, clutching his chest, his throat raw. His nails had dug into his own skin during the dream, red crescent moons blooming on his arms. The sunlight seemed too harsh, like it mocked him. He rose, slowly, trembling fingers touching the scar near his ribs, the one no one knew about, the one he tried to forget. Everything felt loud, his heartbeat, the creak of the bed, the rustling of his clothes. But most of all, the silence. He needed to see him. He didn't know why. Maybe because Taehyung's presence anchored him. Maybe because something inside him believed Taehyung could pull him out of this drowning. He slipped into his uniform, careful to hide the fresh marks, and walked into the day that felt heavier than night. Later college grounds, the sky was gray. Jungkook's steps were hesitant, eyes darting around like prey sensing a hunter. The corridors felt unfamiliar today. Strange. The other students passed by him like ghosts, laughing, living. Not noticing the boy who felt like he was crumbling from within, he looked around searching. But Kim Taehyung wasn't there. For the first time since Jungkook's arrival, Taehyung was absent. His chest tightened, more than it should have. It made no sense. He was just a classmate. Just a dominating alpha who had mocked him, protected him, stared at him like he owned every breath Jungkook took. But now with him gone, the world seemed tilted. Looking for someone? A voice slithered through his thoughts. He turned sharply, but no one was there. His eyes scanned the shadows between the columns, the alley near the gym, the corners the sun forgot. Nothing, but he felt it. The weight of someone watching. His steps quickened, breath caught, fingers twitching. Again he heard it. Soft, laughing. "You don't belong here, pretty thing." He turned again. Nothing. His pulse raced as he walked faster. The trees whispered, the walls loomed, until he bumped into someone, hard. Chest against chest, scent intoxicating. Alpha, familiar. Taehyung, campus garden secluded corner. Taehyung's hand gripped Jungkook's arm before he could fall. H's eyes, dark and tense, searched Jungkook's pale face. "You're shaking," he said, voice lower than usual. Jungkook tried to pull back. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Silence fell. Taehyung looked around, sensing the unease in the air. "Who was it?" Jungkook hesitated. Swallowed. "No one. You're lying." "I said I'm fine," Jungkook snapped, but his voice cracked at the end. Taehyung stepped closer. There was no smirk on his face today. No arrogance. Just a quiet rage bubbling under the surface. "I told you before. If someone lays a hand on you, touches you, even looks at you wrong, I'll make them regret breathing." Jungkook's breath hitched. Something in those words soothed him, broke him. Taehyung's hand reached up, gently brushing Jungkook's hair back. "Who scared you?" Jungkook looked up. And without thinking, without logic or permission from his better judgment, he moved. He grabbed Taehyung's shirt, pulled him down, and kissed him. The kiss. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't planned. It was wild, desperate, brutal. Lips crashed, teeth clashed. Jungkook's hands clutched Taehyung's collar like he was trying to anchor himself in a world too fast, too cruel. Taehyung didn't pull away. In fact, he deepened it. His hands moved to Jungkook's waist, pulling him closer until there was no space left between them. For a moment, just a moment, the world stopped spinning. But it didn't last. Aftermath, Jungkook's room. Jungkook stood in front of his bathroom mirror, chest heaving. What had he done? His fingers trembled as they ran over his swollen lips. He tasted him. He wanted it, craved it, hated himself for it. "No," he whispered, panic rising. He clawed at his arms, nails digging into flesh. Red marks, then blood. He didn't stop. "I'm not like them. I'm not like them," he whispered again and again, rocking slightly. But the mirror only stared back, merciless. You wanted it, it seemed to mock. Tears streamed down. He hated himself. He hated how good it felt. He hated that Taehyung didn't push him away. He hated that he wanted to do it again. And then a chill crept in. The mirror fogged. And a voice familiar, too familiar. The lights flickered. "Still pretty when you cry. Reveal the third presence." He turned. Someone was there, behind him. In his room, a boy tall, lean, eyes dark like ink and water. "I told you we'd meet again," the stranger said, stepping closer. Jungkook stumbled back, hitting the sink. "How did you get in?" The boy didn't answer. Instead, he moved fast. A hand gripped Jungkook's jaw, and then he kissed him. Hard, dominating, possessive. No warmth, just hunger. Jungkook froze, mind blank, heart screaming. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The boy pulled back, smiling like a shadow come alive. "You taste better than I remember," he whispered. And then he was gone. Jungkook collapsed to the floor, knees weak. The door was still locked, but someone had been here. He wasn't safe, and this time, not even Taeyoung might be enough. Scene begins. The morning light crept in slowly, sliding across the wooden floor like a silent ghost. It cast a pale glow over the room, illuminating a still figure on the bed. Jeon Jungkook, naked, motionless, expressionless. His skin was cold, touched not by the sun but by something far darker. He lay on the sheets like a forgotten soul, his body bruised. His lips parted just enough to betray the faintest breath. His eyes were open, but there was no light in them. No fear, no life, he wasn't asleep. He wasn't awake, he simply existed. Sometimes the body survives, but the soul doesn't. And Jungkook, in that moment, was nothing more than a beautiful corpse, breathing but not living. A faint mark circled his neck. Another marred his waist. Traces of someone's hands, someone's hunger. But there was no shame on his face, just silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any cry. His fingers twitched slightly, brushing the bedsheet. No movement followed. He lay there like time had abandoned him, like memories had caged him in a shell he no longer recognized. Pain doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it says nothing at all. A while later, the phone rings. R. The sharp buzz of his phone broke through the dead quiet. The screen lit up against the bedside table. A name flashed, Kim Taeyoung calling. Jungkook didn't move. His eyes remained fixed on the ceiling, lashes still as stone. The phone vibrated again and again. Taehyung's voice echoed through the voicemail. "Jungkook, I know you're there. Don't ignore me. Say something. Please." Nothing, no blink, no breath, no voice. The sound faded. Silence reclaimed the room. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. And Jungkook's silence was punishment. Some time passes, he moves. Eventually his body stirred. Not from will, but from habit. He rose like a ghost pulled from the grave, draped in nothing but his own emptiness. Step by step, he moved to the bathroom. The mirror didn't greet him. It accused him. Bruises bloomed across his body like wilted flowers. A bite mark near his collarbone. Red lines down his chest, reminders. Jungkook stared at his reflection. But all he saw was someone else, someone weak, someone used, and yet innocent. Innocence isn't the absence of experience. Sometimes it's the refusal to become cruel in return. His lips parted, but no sound came. Not even a breath of protest. His hand reached out, touching the mirror's cold surface, as if trying to remind himself he was still there. That he was real. That he hadn't vanished completely. Tears threatened to surface, but didn't fall. His tear ducts had grown tired, worn out from nights spent begging the void. Today he didn't need to cry. Today he needed to endure. Later that day, at the university. Then we see the university campus, buzzing with life, footsteps echoing across tiled floors, and whispers curling in the air like smoke. Jungkook walked through the crowd like a ghost. Heads turned. Whispers followed him. "That's him, right? The Omega Taehyung's obsessed with? He looks so ordinary. I don't get the hype. Down market Omega. Bet he thinks he owns the world now that he got a night with the richest alpha in the country." He heard it all, but his face betrayed nothing. No pain, no shame, just silence. A different kind of armor. The cruelest wounds are the ones we cannot see. And today Jungkook bled invisibly. His steps were steady, not strong. Just determined. The kind of determination that comes from needing to survive, not thrive. He carried himself like a storm-swept tree, bent, stripped, but still standing. He reached his lecture hall. No one dared speak directly to him. But eyes lingered, some with pity, some with envy, most with judgment. He sat in the farthest corner, alone, still unreachable. Then we see girls gossiping nearby. In the hallway, a few Omega girls laughed under their breath. I can't believe this is the same Jungkook. He looks like he just crawled out of hell. Guess even hell has its pretty boys. Imagine thinking you're royalty because a rich alpha picked you for a night. Tragic. They giggled. Jungkook didn't flinch, but his fingers tightened around his book. Just for a moment. The moment passed. He remained a blank canvas. Sometimes dignity is silent. It walks away instead of shouting back. But inside something burned. A small flickering fire that refused to die. Not rage, not revenge, just pain. Pure and heavy, like wet ash pressed into his chest. Then we see hallway turning point. Then we see the main hallway. Jungkook was walking past the lockers when a voice called out, loud, sharp, unmistakable. Jungkook. The world seemed to stop. Every pair of eyes turned. Every breath was held. Taeyoung stood there, disheveled, breathless. His alpha energy radiated off him like heat. But today he wasn't in control. He was desperate. He walked forward slowly, eyes locked on Jungkook. And then he dropped to his knees. Gasps erupted. An alpha on his knees for an omega? Whispers flew like arrows. Is he crazy? That's Taeyoung. What is he doing? This is insane. Taeyoung reached into his blazer and pulled out a small silver chain. A claiming chain. He held it out, palm trembling. Jungkook, be mine. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a plea. It was a declaration, loud, raw, vulnerable. You are mine. Jungkook stared. Expressionless, wordless, breathless. Taeyoung's voice trembled now, soft and broken. I don't care what they say. I don't care what you've done. You think you're broken? Good. I like broken things. Because they show me where to love. He looked up, eyes glistening. Let them watch. Let them talk. Let the world burn if you'll just look at me. But Jungkook didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't breathe. His silence was louder than any scream. Taeyoung's words were fire, but Jungkook? He was ice. Still Taeyoung stayed there, kneeling, waiting. Jungkook looked at the chain, then at the boy, and then he walked away. No word, no glance, just silence. And in that silence a war began, not between them but inside them. The hallway echoed with stunned breaths and silence. Taeyoung remained on the floor. And Jungkook? He didn't look back. Because sometimes the deepest desires are the quietest, and the most dangerous chains are invisible. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something neither of them understood. A connection stitched with wounds, stitched with silence, but stitched nonetheless. We see the air around the university courtyard was unusually still, the kind of silence that felt like it was waiting to be shattered. Morning light spilled through the cherry blossom trees, soft and pink, almost mocking the heavy weight in Jungkook's chest. He stood there, shoulders squared, face impassive, eyes dead quiet. People whispered around him like wind brushing against glass, gentle but breaking. And in front of him, Kim Taeyoung stood, tall, radiant, dangerous, an alpha in every breath, his voice low and resonant as he spoke. Jeon Jungkook, he said, and the crowd stilled. I don't want to wait anymore. Be mine, as my partner. Right here, in front of everyone. Gasps floated around them like feathers in a storm. It was absurd, unreal. An alpha like him proposing to someone like Jungkook? Jungkook's heart trembled inside his ribs, but his face remained a mask. No expression, no words, not even a blink. The silence dragged so long it began to feel like rejection. Murmurs began. But then slowly, almost like a ghost slipping through time, Jungkook moved forward. No smile, no answer, just one step. And another. He walked toward Taeyoung, his eyes unreadable, his body a picture of quiet surrender. And then, without a word, he leaned up and kissed him. It was soft and like before, a kiss that spoke not of hunger but of sorrow. A goodbye wrapped in acceptance. An innocent soul drenched in pain giving in. The crowd erupted into chaos, screams, cheers, shock, but Jungkook didn't flinch. And Taeyoung? He froze, lips still tingling from the softness he hadn't expected. This kiss wasn't passionate, it was haunted. But it was a yes, his yes. Jungkook stepped back slowly. His eyes still didn't shine. His body still looked like a porcelain doll carved out of grief. But his hand brushed against Taeyoung's wrist for a brief second. Almost like saying, I'll come with you. Just don't ask why. In the far corner of the courtyard, under the shadows of the old university tower, someone else watched. Not clapping, not speaking, just watching. Eyes sharp, almost glowing under the shadow. His jaw clenched, fists tight. And when Jungkook kissed Taeyoung, His gaze darkened like thunder rolling behind the hills. He turned without a word and disappeared through the trees. A storm was coming, sometime later. The sunlight had moved across the sky, now softer, casting golden glows on everything it touched. Jungkook sat alone in the back of the art building, knees pulled to his chest. No one dared approach, not because they feared him, but because they didn't know what to say. His friends, people who once teased him, walked beside him, whispered silly things about cafeteria food, now passed him like he didn't exist. Laughter stopped when he entered a room. Eyes burned into his back when he walked down the hallway, but not with hate, with curiosity, with judgment. Down Market Omega, someone had whispered that morning. Bet he thinks he's royalty now. Another voice, sharper, crueler. One night with an alpha like that, and he thinks he owns the world. He had heard it all, but he didn't react. No trembling lip, no tears, just that same cold, soft silence. He felt like air, everywhere and nowhere. Scene shift. Later that evening, Taeyoung found him on the rooftop, curled under a rusted pipe, staring at the horizon like it owed him something. "You're hard to find when you want to be," Taeyoung said softly. Jungkook didn't look up. The silence between them was thick, unbearably quiet. "I'm throwing a party tonight," Taeyoung added after a moment. "I want you to come." Still no reply. Taeyoung's fingers tightened around the edge of the railing. "Please," that one word spoken like a prayer. Jungkook turned to him slowly, his face unreadable, his eyes not empty, but locked away. And then, to Taeyoung's shock, he nodded. Just once. A small tired nod that meant, "I'll come." But again, no words. Scene shift. The night of the party, the hall was drenched in lights. Velvet curtains, gold accents, music flowing like warm wine. Students dressed in designer clothes, glasses of sparkling drinks in hand, buzzed with the thrill of being close to wealth, power, and gossip. All eyes turned as Taeyoung entered. But more than him, they waited. And then the doors opened again. Jeon Jungkook. Dressed in a simple black shirt, loose around his fragile frame, jeans that clung to his hips like shadows. Hair a little messy, eyes still silent. He walked in like a dream no one could interpret. And the whispers started again. But this time, they weren't mocking. They were afraid. Is that really him? Why is he here? He looks different. Taeyoung's eyes caught his across the room. And for a second, the entire world stilled. He walked toward Jungkook, ignoring everyone else. Took his hand, held it tight, and kissed his knuckles. "You came," he whispered. Jungkook didn't answer. But his fingers twitched, just slightly, as if they remembered the warmth from before. Their bodies moved together like gravity couldn't keep them apart anymore. Taeyoung guided him through the hall, introduced him to no one, because Jungkook didn't need anyone. Tonight, he was the story. And somewhere far in the corner of the party, hidden behind a mask of shadows and dim lights, that stranger from before was there. Watching, not dancing, not drinking, just watching, his breath slow, his eyes darker than ever. And this time his anger wasn't quiet. It was roaring inside him like wolves waiting to kill. Scene shift. On the balcony, Taeyoung led Jungkook to the open balcony, away from the noise. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked finally. "Back then when I asked, you kissed me, Jungkook. But you didn't speak." Jungkook leaned against the railing, staring into the moonlight. He looked like a ghost in the glow. "I didn't have words left," he whispered at last. Taeyoung stepped closer. "I don't want just your silence," he said gently. "I want your truths." Jungkook looked up at him then, and for the first time in days, there was a flicker in his eyes. Not light, not darkness, but memory. Pain, longing. He opened his mouth, but then closed it again. "Can I just stay like this for now?" he asked softly. "Next to you. Even if I don't speak." Taeyoung wrapped his arms around him without asking. His scent wrapped around Jungkook like home never had. "You can," he murmured, "for as long as you need." Behind them, inside the hall, the music grew louder. But out here the world was quiet. And for a moment, Jungkook felt something he hadn't in a long time. Safe, not healed, not whole, but safe. And deep in the forest behind the university, where shadows danced like curses, someone else let out a scream no one heard. A hand crushed a glass. Blood dripped down a wrist. The storm was no longer coming. It had already begun. After that, we see the golden hue of afternoon light spilled across the narrow alley behind the small cafe. The warmth of the sun felt hollow, like light without heat, as Jungkook tied his apron around his slim waist and stepped through the back door. It was his second job of the day. After college, after walking the long corridors with silent footsteps and blank expressions, he came here. The smell of roasted beans and old sugar comforted him more than people ever had. This cafe didn't ask questions, it just let him exist. Inside, the air buzzed with soft conversation and the clink of cups. But outside something felt off. Someone was watching. He felt it in the heaviness of the air, like a storm waiting to crack open. He looked over his shoulder, eyes scanning the alley. Empty. Just stacked crates and the drip of water from a rusted pipe. But something in his chest twisted. He wasn't alone, and yet he went back inside. Because fear was a luxury he had stopped affording long ago. Sometime later, Jungkook stood behind the counter, mechanically pouring milk into a paper cup, steam clouding his vision. A group of college girls giggled in the corner. One of them pointed at him. "Isn't that the down-market Omega who's with Kim Tae-young?" She whispered just loud enough for the poison to spread. The other girl scoffed. "He's lucky to be alive after that night. Must have begged Tae-young to claim him. I die of shame." Jungkook heard every word, but he didn't flinch, didn't blink. Just stirred the latte as if it wasn't his name being dragged like dirty laundry in public. The boy who once cried behind locked bathroom doors was long dead. Now he just listened, silently. Like stone, his phone vibrated. Tae-young. The name flashed across the screen like fire against ice. He stared at it, unmoving. He didn't answer. But something in his chest ached. A storm that no one could see. Evening, a different kind of alpha. The sun dipped beneath the city's skyline, painting the world in shades of deep orange and muted violet. Outside the cafe, Jungkook pulled his jacket tight and started walking home. But a sleek black car pulled up in front of him. The window rolled down. Kim Tae-young's face appeared, calm, unreadable, dangerous. "Get in." Jungkook blinked, silent. "I want you to come with me," Tae-young said. "There's a party tonight." A pause. Then Tae-young added with unusual softness, "But before that, let's shop. You need something fitting." Jungkook opened the door. Got in, said nothing. Tae-young glanced at him sideways as the car moved. "You still won't speak to me?" Jungkook looked ahead. His silence was no longer defiance. It was a kind of surrender. Tae-young didn't press further, just clenched the steering wheel tighter. They stopped at a designer boutique where glass sparkled like diamonds and clothes cost more than Jungkook's rent. Inside, Tae-young held up a tailored black suit and a deep burgundy shirt. "This would look good on you." Jungkook didn't argue. He just changed. And when he stepped out of the fitting room, the silence grew heavy. Tae-young stared, eyes dark, expression unreadable. "You look like someone meant to be worshipped." And Jungkook, he just buttoned the cuffs slowly, expression blank. Outside, the world spun fast, but between them, time stood still. At the party, all eyes on them, the hall shimmered with light. Crystals hung from the ceiling, reflecting gold onto polished floors. People turned, gasped, whispered, because Kim Tae-young had walked in. With Jungkook on his arm, some jaws dropped. Some stared in disbelief. "That's him?" someone whispered. "Tae-young's Omega? No way. They say he was just a toy. Now he's being shown off like royalty." Jungkook heard it all, but he said nothing. He walked beside Tae-young like a ghost in human skin, graceful, elegant, but unreadable. His face gave away nothing, no pride, no fear, no shame, just stillness. Tae-young leaned closer and murmured, "Ignore them. You belong here?" Jungkook turned slightly, eyes lifting to meet his. And in front of everyone who doubted, everyone who whispered, he let Tae-young kiss him. Soft, then firm, then possessive. Gasps echoed around them like shattered glass. But Jungkook didn't flinch, didn't push him away, didn't speak. Only watched Tae-young's eyes like he was reading a book no one else had been allowed to open. Across the room, a shadow watching in the far corner near the wine bar, someone stood still, face half-shadowed, hands clenched at his sides. He had watched every moment, every glance, every kiss, and something inside him cracked. Blood rushed to his head as jealousy turned into rage, twisting like a blade in his chest. He walked out, not fast, not slow, just silent, like a storm walking in human skin. Later that night, the dark room in a dim, locked room lit by a single flickering bulb. The air was heavy with the scent of damp wood and dust. A man sat in the corner, cross-legged, his eyes bloodshot, smile stretched unnaturally wide. He stared at a photo, Vkook, framed, smiling, a picture from another time, one no one remembered. But he did. He always did. "You were mine," the man whispered. His voice cracked like dry paper. "You smiled only for me. Remember that, Vkook?" He let out a laugh, loud then louder. It turned into something unhinged. Mad, he slammed the photo on the wall. Cracks spider-webbed across the glass. "You think you can walk away from me? Smile for someone else? Let him kiss you? Dress you like a doll and parade you around?" He stood, breathing heavy, sweat shining on his brow. "No, you don't get to do that, not to me." He started pacing, faster, then slower. Then he stopped, looked up at the ceiling, and whispered like a prayer laced in poison. "Wait for me, John Vkook. I'll show you what happens to people who forget who they belong to." And then he laughed, the kind of laugh that made the night colder. Sometimes the quietest hearts hide the loudest screams. This was just another chapter in Crimson Desire, but nothing is ever just what it seems. Jeon Jungkook's silence, Kim Tae-young's unexpected warmth, and that unknown shadow watching from the dark. Things are only getting started. The games of obsession, betrayal, and twisted love are slowly beginning to unfold. And you, yes, you are right in the middle of it. So if you felt a shiver, if your heart skipped a beat, that's not a mistake. It means you're already a part of this story. To all of you who stayed until the end of this chapter, thank you. You're not just readers, you're witnesses. Witnesses to a love so dangerous, so broken, so beautifully cruel. The secrets you think you know, you don't. The person you trust might be the one hiding the knife. So stay close, because in the world of Crimson Desire, even a kiss can leave blood on your lips, and even love can kill. Stay with author Cinnway, and see how deep the crimson runs.